Investors commonly purchase bonds as a way to add diversity to their portfolios. There are several ways investors can invest in bonds. In this video, we'll explain two common ways to do this: buying individual bonds and purchasing shares in a bond fund, such as a mutual fund or exchange-traded fund, also known as an ETF. Also in this video, we'll examine the benefits and risks of investing in an individual bond versus a bond fund. Let's get started. We'll begin with individual bonds. Individual bonds are considered a less risky investment. Two reasons are: 1. A bond provides regular interest payments, and 2. A bond returns the original amount of the investment or principal at maturity. By investing in highly rated individual bonds, an investor can feel confident that the bonds may deliver on these two promises. Of course, changes in interest rates can cause a bond's value to rise or fall, but this only matters if you sell your bond before maturity. In fact, if you wait until maturity and rates keep rising, you don't have to worry. You'll still receive your original investment when the bond reaches maturity. Many investors consider it to be a benefit of individual bonds. However, purchasing individual bonds has its drawbacks. Some people may not have the funds to purchase a bond because bonds are commonly sold in denominations. A minimum denomination may be as low as $5,000 or as high as $20,000. This may result in an investor purchasing bonds from only one issuer, which can lead to a poorly diversified bond portfolio. Diversification is as important with bonds as it is with stocks, because purchasing bonds from an issuer means the investor must rely on the issuer's financial strength. Unlike individual bonds, bond funds allow investors to easily diversify their bond investments because the fund has ownership of several bonds. Now that you've learned what an individual bond is and its risks and benefits, let's move on to bond funds. A bond fund is an investment that pools money together from many investors to purchase a variety of bonds. Investors buy shares of the fund and receive dividends paid by the fund. Investors buy shares of the fund, which entitles them to the fund's future earnings. We mentioned previously that bond denominations usually require at least $5,000 to buy individual bonds. However, buying a share in a bond fund tends to be much cheaper. This is also true for a bond ETF. Additionally, a bond fund may provide built-in diversification. While bonds tend to fluctuate less than stocks, they do fluctuate in value. A bond fund also doesn't provide the assurance of consistent interest payments and the return of principal that individual bonds provide. Despite the inconsistent payments, bond funds normally do pay a dividend. This dividend can vary, but in some cases it's paid on a monthly basis. So while the amount may be inconsistent, regular income can generally be expected. It's true that the fund does receive the interest and the principal of the bonds it owns, but that doesn't translate to the fund shareholder in the same way as it does when owning an individual bond. The fund will receive the principal, and the funds will likely be reinvested or distributed. In review, an individual bond provides the promise of regular interest payments and the return of principal at maturity, while bond funds usually require lower initial investments and provide greater diversification. But both investments may help reduce the overall volatility to your portfolio and reduce risk. So which bond investment is right for you? Well, that depends. As you learned, each has its own benefits and risks. Consider your own investing goals and strategies before making any investment.